Hello, this is Darkness. I'm calling about the nightmares you ordered. The nightmares about chilling true phone call stories. Oh, you, didn't order that? Well, it's a little too late to back out. Enjoy.
If you guys want your stories to appear in a video like this one, you can send them over at darknessprevails.org. I'm looking for stories about La Llorona. Breathing by Johnny J. I'm 25 and a certified nurse. For most of my adult life, I lived with my late mother. Just after high school, she became bedridden with chronic and constant respiratory problems and infections. As such, I stayed at home with her to help. It was around that time that someone began to stalk my mother. Someone she had worked with just before she quit work due to her worsening health problems. My mother had worked for the United States Postal Service as a driver for several years. It was only during her waning years that Gary showed up. Gary was a mid-30-something guy, tall, looked like he had done a little too many substances during his youth. He was way too thin, and the skin on his face seemed to be too close to the bones, the way it does when people have been doing things for years, if you catch my drift. My mother was the one who had to show Gary the ropes, taught him how to sort the mail, drive the truck, which route to follow, things like that. Gary, though, as my mother put it, didn't so much pay attention to her instructions, as much as he kept his eyes on her and her body. Immediately, she felt uncomfortable with Gary and had asked her boss if someone else could teach him. Her boss said no. They were short-handed, he said, and he assumed that she was just overreacting. So she continued to instruct Gary, until a certain incident a month or so into his employment on the site. While my mother was driving around with Gary, he placed his hand on her thigh. The moment she turned to him to shout and to ask what he was thinking, he planted his face in hers, trying to kiss and, get this, lick my mother. She immediately stopped the vehicle and called the cops on him. She ended up getting Gary fired, and he was not very happy with that, and probably even less happy with the fact that my mother did not reciprocate his feelings. My mom began to see Gary everywhere after that, at the grocery store, following in his car, and even once outside her home. She filed another police report against Gary, but he was nowhere to be found when the police were around. When my mother was forced to retire due to her health, she quickly told me the story of Gary, telling me to keep an eye and an ear out, because any knock at the door, any call at the landline, could be dangerous. When I began tending to my mother, I was on my toes. Whenever the doorbell rang or someone knocked, I checked the peephole, kept a baseball bat by the door. I quickly answered unknown calls, ready to gather information if the person was suspicious. But it was almost always spam calls. Almost. There was one call that I will never forget, a call that shook me to the core. I was sitting on the couch that day, waiting for a package to be delivered any moment, as I had ordered something on Amazon a week ago. I was on red alert at the time, as I had seen Gary just the day before when going out to pick up some prescriptions for my mother. He was watching me closely. I was in that kind of state where, even if I knew the doorbell was going to ring, I would still jump. But it wasn't the doorbell that got me. It was the landline. It started ringing all of a sudden, blaring that annoying sound from the kitchen. I nearly wet myself. I got up and ran over to look at the caller ID. It said unknown. My heart rate picked up a bit. Hesitantly, I picked up the phone. "Hello?" I said. It was silent for a few seconds, but when I heard it, I could barely stand. Deep, heavy, raspy breathing. It came in long draws in and out. It sounded like someone who was deliberately trying to be scary. "Look, Gary," I said, my voice trembling. I'm calling the cops now, and I'm going to get them to trace this number." I honestly didn't know what I was talking about, but I was trying my best to sound authoritative, to sound intimidating. But the breathing continued, in fact, getting deeper and louder than before. It spooked me so bad, I slammed the phone back on the hook. Only seconds later, it rang again. Unknown. I don't know what pushed me, but I did pick it up again. I was ready to scream, but my voice got caught in my throat. The breathing was back, again louder than before, almost desperate sounding. This guy, he was truly depraved. I pulled out my cell phone to call the police, trying to stay on the line with Gary in case I could get more clues or info about his whereabouts or motives. That is, if he ever stopped breathing like that. But the battery on my cell phone wasn't charged, and it wouldn't turn on. I had forgotten to charge it last night. Crap, I thought. And then, just as my panicking reached its climax, the breathing ended with a drawn-out sigh. The line went quiet. Gary hadn't hung up. The line was still going, it was just silent. Quickly, I clicked the hook on the landline to hang up, and I began to dial for the cops anyway. After being told that the police couldn't do much but check the area where we'd last seen Gary, I hung up the phone and went to check on my mother. I walked down the hall, opened her bedroom door. She was lying in bed on her back, her arm limp over the side of the bed. She appeared to be sleeping. I walked over and tapped on her shoulder, trying to get her to wake up. She was a light sleeper and it was time for her meds. But she didn't move. "Mom?" I stuttered. I began to shake her. The longer she didn't react, the more violent the shaking became. "Mom, wake up!" I was shouting now. But my mother never woke up. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics confirmed it. My mother was gone. Somehow, a thick buildup of phlegm from the severity of her infection had caused her to suffocate. Her body couldn't even cough it out. I'd never even heard of something like that before. I was devastated. But there was something more to her passing that broke me, ruined me forever. Because the day I found my mother, her arm limp over the side of the bed, I also found her cell phone under her lifeless hand. The last number she had dialed was our landline. If only I had charged my cell phone the night before. If only I hadn't assumed that the breathing sound on the phone was Gary. If only I knew why our landline had labeled my mom's cell phone number as unknown. It was my mom that called our landline that day because I wasn't answering my cell phone. The Call from Nowhere by Kacie E. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced, and it was easily the creepiest phone call I'd ever received. My friend Jesse and I were staying at an old hotel in the middle of Mississippi, a place that was supposed to be haunted. Now, Jesse and I did not believe that. What we did believe was that they made it up to get people to stay the night there. But still, it worked on us. Though we didn't believe in the paranormal, we stayed there as if to say, "Oh yeah? Ghosts? Where?" A sort of rebellious hotel stay, I guess. Jesse and I did not bring anything more than some changes of clothes, and our cell phones, of course, for our 2-day stay that weekend. We had a great time too. The place was near a ton of brick-and-mortar restaurants that had some of the most amazing food I'd ever tasted, and the hiking spots at the nearby national park were gorgeous. So yeah, we enjoyed our time there, until the last 12 hours. We were settling in at the hotel, crawled up in our separate beds watching Andy Griffith on the TV. Whatever station was playing had tons of old shows going, and it was pretty cool. Eventually, though, the two of us got bored. We tried sleeping at that point, but we were just too awake. Jesse and I then decided that taking a walk would be enjoyable. We threw on our shoes, skipping the socks, and began to wander the halls, carrying on conversations in whispers, so as to not wake up the 2 or 3 other guests in the building. The place was so gothic on the inside. It looked like the owners were trying really hard to make it spooky, but all they really did was make the place look overly fancy and old. Then again, that would just be a win-win for anyone wanting to make money off of the hotel. We soon made our way to the lobby, where we caught the guy at the front desk dozing off. That's when we started a conversation with him, a conversation that soon turned into an interview, as we began to bombard him with curious questions about the hotel. Was it really haunted? Yeah, he said. Are they just making you say that? No, he said. Have you ever seen anything personally? Well, no, he explained. But he said he knew the backstory of the place. Jackpot. Of course, we asked him to tell us the story. Apparently, this place had always been a hotel since it was built. The owner's daughter, at the age of 15, spent most of her free time hanging around the property, talking to guests, watering plants, and reading her books. Most people appreciated seeing her there, and she soon became a bit of a local icon. Then she went missing. When her remains were found in one of the rooms of this very hotel, her father was furious and ended up taking the life of the person who last stayed in that room, a quiet, local young man. I wasn't really sure if I believed his story when it was over, but it was entertaining nonetheless. After talking with the guy, Jesse and I headed off to bed. It was way too early in the morning when the sound of my phone ringing jolted me awake. What? I thought. I could have sworn I had it on silent. I grabbed my phone and saw that I was getting a call. The strange part was there was absolutely no caller information on the screen. Just the green and red buttons and a blank caller profile. Usually there'd at least be something on the screen like unknown or suspected spam for a call like this. Curious, I answered it. Yeah, this is Kacie. I cleared my throat. The other end was silent for a moment. I waited for a few seconds, still no reply. Hello? I nearly managed to say before I was interrupted.
My room.
It was so loud I nearly fell out of the bed. Excuse me? I responded.
Leave now,
the voice said before hanging up. I pulled the phone from my face and confusedly looked at the screen. I clicked the phone icon and pulled up my recent calls. It wasn't there. My most recent call was my mother when I had called her this afternoon. It was like the call never happened. But I know I heard that voice. I know it was real. In the morning, I convinced Jesse to get up so we could check out early. We haven't been back to the hotel since, though I do feel some morbid excitement to stay there again. If you find an old-looking hotel in Mississippi, maybe stay a while. Who knows? You could get a special call from someone in the middle of the night. He Knew My Name by Stephen. I'm 14 and I had an extremely creepy experience with someone I wish to forget. I frequented a small local grocery store. They had a brand of coffee drinks in the back that I particularly enjoyed. I never had any problems there, just went in, got my coffee, and gave the clerk a $5. You'd think with a routine as simple as that, nothing could possibly go wrong, right? Sadly, that's incorrect. One day, I went in hankering for a vanilla flavor of the coffee I liked. I made my way through the usual aisles of the store, passing the seasoning and spices section, then the chips aisle, before making my way to the back where they stored milk, eggs, etc. Just as I was opening the cold door to grab my coffee, I noticed a large shape next to me just behind the door. I could tell it was a man from the shape, but the condensation on the door was blocking any detail. Instinctively, I shut the door, having never grabbed my coffee. Then I took in the sight of the strange man. His hair was long and as black as it was straight. It appeared greasy, just like his skin. He looked to be in his late 20s and was immediately off-putting. Then he spoke to me. "Got any change?" He asked in a voice I could barely hear. No," I managed to say. "I don't keep any cash on me." I lied. This is something I saw my dad say to a homeless person once, though he was honest when he said it. "Don't you lie to me, you little piece of garbage," he said in a lowered tone now, and I could tell he was mad. "I've seen you come in here before," he hissed at me. Not knowing what to say and terrified, I turned and ran back to the entrance. He never followed, but I still ran the entire way back home. As the weeks passed by, I soon stopped thinking about the incident. Though I never forgot about it. How could I? It was so unexpected and weird. Well, one evening I was chilling in my room, drawing. I had my phone next to me on vibrate, right next to my sketchbook. Suddenly, it began to go off. Without looking, I picked it up, answered it, and said hello, thinking it was my friend Jacob, who I was expecting a call from.
"Hi, Stephen."
Immediately, I recognized the voice. My entire body was chilled, my heart pounding. "How did you get my—" I tried to reply.
"There's no kindness left in the world."
"How do you know my name?" I shouted at him.
"Oh, Stephen, you're a little liar. I don't like it when people lie. You want to know what I do to people who lie?"
Quickly, I hung up. Moments later, it began to ring again, but I ignored it, absolutely horrified. Freaking out, I ran to my mom and told her what was happening. We blocked the number via our phone service, and she gave me a good talking to, telling me that if I ever encounter anyone like that again, she needed to know about it immediately, before it got to that point. Luckily for me, nothing has happened since. But considering it was so recent, just a few months ago, I'm still afraid he'll call from a different number. Or worse, appear at my doorstep. A Scary True Phone Call Story by Michael M. After an appointment I had, my mother and I went into a shop called Ned's. We walked around Ned's for a while, looking for something that I'd like to buy. We must have spent about 20 minutes just walking around. After that 20 minutes or so, we got a call from what I thought was my dad. My mother answered the call. My dad asked where we were and she said, "At Ned's at the shopping center." He replied, saying that he'll be there soon. 10 minutes later, he called again, saying, "Where are you?" My mother answered, I told you we're at Ned's. And that's when things start to get really creepy. You never told me you were at Ned's, he said. My mother replied, confused. Yes, I did. Yes, we did. No, you didn't, my dad said. I'm at here, the clinic. But I said we're at Ned's, my mother exclaimed. My dad sighed and said, all right, I'll be there soon. A few minutes later, he arrived at the shop. He came in and had a conversation with my mother. She checked her phone call history to show him that he had called and that she had in fact told him previously that they were at Ned's. What she found was a contact at the same exact time that she had picked up that previous call, but it was not my dad's number. What's even creepier was who the number belonged to, but my dad's recently passed brother, who sounded exactly like him. My only explanation for this is that maybe it was him from the other side. Maybe he doesn't know he's dead yet. A Target Toy Phone Call by Luna343. It was a week before Halloween. My sister, mom, brother, and I went to Target at the nearby mall. As soon as we got there, my sister said that her and my mom will be looking at movies, so Alex and I looked around, Alex being my brother. We went to see the Halloween decorations, messing around and trying a few of them on. Nothing really scared us at the time. It was more funny than scary. Then my brother and I headed back to where my mom and Ava were, Ava being my sister. That's when we heard a phone ringing. My brother and I looked around thinking it was someone's cell phone, and they were just ignoring it, which was beginning to get annoying. As we continued to try to ignore it, we soon saw where it was coming from, and at first we couldn't believe it. It was coming from a toy phone, one that sensed you were close to it and would ring if you've got it on. Alex walked up to it, having a joke in mind. He picked it up and said hello, with a conniving little smile on his face. I didn't find the joke amusing, and then things took a sharp turn for the horrifying, because we both heard a voice coming from the other side.
Help me, please.
It was loud enough that I could hear it clearly from where I was standing, despite not holding it up to my ear like Alex was. Speaking of whom, Alex had a horrified look on his face. He was just staring off into the distance, in complete and utter disbelief that he had heard something on the other side. Something that should not be said on a children's toy. I remember watching him pull the phone from his face, looking it over, up and down, back and forth. This toy, it's not Halloween themed. Of course it's not, I said. It's in the kids' toy section. But, he tried to say, why would it say that when you held it up to your ear? I shook my head. He put the phone down, and we ran out of there, finding our mom and sister, begging them to leave. To this day, we do not know why the toy said something like that, or even if it was the toy, not something else. But it's definitely a memory that will always live on in my mind. Somewhere out there, there's a spirit who's suffering, and on Halloween, it calls for help. Phone calls are so commonplace in our world that answering your phone is basically second nature, which leaves you completely vulnerable and unsuspecting. When someone or something calls just to haunt you and terrify you. Always check who's calling before answering, and if the phone says unknown, just leave it alone, unless you really want to harass the people spam calling you. Then again, it may not be spam that you hear. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget, you can send me your scary stories at darknessprevails.org. I'm looking for stories about La Llorona. If you want to support my channel further, go to patreon.com/darknessprevails. Donate any amount, and you'll get all future episodes as ad-free downloads, and you'll get your name in the credits at the end of these videos. If you have a little bit of extra cash, and you have no clothes for some weird reason, go to teespring.com/darkprevails and get some Darkness Prevails merchandise. Thank you. Now then, here are my 5 favorite early comments from the previous video about 5 creepy night drive stories. Joel C. says, I love your amazing upload schedule. Keep it up. I also love my upload schedule. Uploads mean I get to eat and pay my bills, and Daddy Darkness loves to pay them bills. Thanks, Joel. El Hombre says, I fall asleep to your stories. So relaxing to that moist voice of yours. Ugh, yeah, my voice is often too moist. I'm always slobbering and whatnot, getting all over my desk. Good thing I have Bjorn to come clean it up. Bjorn, bring the towel. Chase Corbet says, whoa, I think I just realized this is my favorite channel. Keep up the good work, Darkness. Well, I probably ruined it if I butchered your name, but if I didn't, we've converted another one, boys. Keep the victims coming. Kate McGinty says, when my husband and I were still dating, I was driving to see him one night and was passing along a dark country road. I saw a faint light, so I slowed down in case it was an animal. But no, it was some 6-foot-plus dude in all black and a hoodie. That's creepy, because when someone's wearing all black in the middle of the night, you know they're up to something. You don't just perfectly blend into your environment for no reason. And Farmland USA says, scary time, come on grab your friend, the darkness never ends, it's scary time. The lyrics definitely need work, Farmland, but you've got a lot of potential there. Anyways guys, thanks so much for tuning in to another Darkness Prevails episode. More scary stories are coming soon, so stay tuned. Until next time, here are the credits to my patrons who continue to donate. Remember, stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.